Welcome everyone to this very special presentation of Lynn Community Television, a conversation with Tom Costin. My name is Richard Coppinger. My co-host for this event will be my longtime good friend, former city council colleague for a long time also, current treasurer of the board of directors here at Lynn Community Television, president of the board of directors at the Lynn Museum, as well as many other titles, I'm sure, my good friend Joe Scanlon, and of course, our guest of honor, Thomas P. Costin Jr. Joe, glad to have you here, and glad you agreed to do this. And there's so much to talk to Mr. Costin about. I'm just not quite sure where to start.
Well, Dick, you know, it's a rare occasion when you have the opportunity to get an oral history from someone with as much experience and memories and history as someone like Tom Costin. He's done it all, from the local level to the federal level, and he's had interaction with presidents. I even saw a picture of him meeting a pope. So he's even an international celebrity. So he's from Lynn, and I think we should really start in the beginning when you first ran for office, or even before that, where you went to school.
Well, Joe, I grew up in Lynn on Pennybrook Road. We lived right next to my grandmother, who came from Ireland, and had 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. And of the boys, 3 of them were police officers, my father being one of them. And we went to a little school right off of Walnut Street and Harmon Street in Lynn. It was a 2-room school called the Oswald School. They had 2 teachers. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades were in 1 room with 1 teacher. 4th, 5th, and 6th grades were in the 2nd room with 1 teacher. And so we were getting about 1/3 of the education that we should have been getting, because when she was teaching one class, the other classes had to do some studying and so forth. And a lot of times we didn't do anything, you know, we were just sitting there. But it was a wonderful time to grow up, because the teachers we had wanted to give us all the information that they themselves had, but they also brought in a lot of things about history. And what they would do, they would have us take part in programs that would display some of the interesting parts of history. And when we had a snowstorm, we had to dress up like the soldiers at the George Washington soldiers during the war, and things like this. And so since we were 2 miles outside of the area, we should have been going to Bree Junior High School once we graduated from the 6th grade. But because we were two miles away, they sent us to Corbett Junior High School, where we got free passes to ride the transportation down to Lynn. So we went from the Oswald School down to the Corbett Junior High School, and then from Corbett we went to Classical High School. And so that was our trip through education to Lynn.
So you went to Corbett, it was right here?
Yes.
At the top of the hill?
Yes, top of the hill.
Liberty Street?
Yes.
It's a long way from Pennybrook Road.
Yes, a long way, but it was a nice 45-minute ride going down and coming back home.
Now, a lot of people may not know that Corbett Junior High School was English high school prior to that.
That's true, yes, absolutely.
Now, do you remember when English was built?
No, I don't know.
What year.
I know I am 92, but I can't remember when English was built.
The new English was built.
I probably wasn't paying attention in those days.
Well, there was a fire there in the original English.
Yes.
The original English here at Corbett?
Yes, yes. That's really 3 buildings.
Yeah. Right, it is.
It's the English.
Because what we had there, Joe, we not only had the Corbett, but trade school was right there too. It was part of the building.
Right.
Yeah.
On the side on James Street?
Yeah, the side on James Street, yeah.
Dick and I are familiar with both the Oliver School and the Corbett School, because when we were city councils, they both closed when we were on the council.
Right, those are not good times, right. So from there, after English, was on to Boston College?
Well, no, from there, I graduated in 1944 from Classical, and the war was still going on. And my father, during World War I, he was 17 in 1917, And I heard the story so many times from my grandmother, how when he turned 17, he wanted to join the Marine Corps, and how he went up to try to join the Marine Corps in 1917, and he was too young, because he was only 17, and he had to bring my grandmother the next day up to sign his papers. So in 1944, the day after I graduated from high school, I went up to the recruiting sergeant in Boston, and not knowing it at the time, but Ed Cale from Lynn, who was the sports editor down at the Lynn item, he was also a city councilor. He was a councilor at large. He left the council job, he left his job, and he joined the Marine Corps. But because he was over 29 at the time, they sent him out to be a recruiting sergeant in Boston. So when I went up to join, he knew my father, knew my uncles, who were two police officers in Lynn, and so he told me right out that I was just too young to bring my father back or bring somebody back. So what I did when I went home, instead of going right home and seeing my father, I stopped off at my grandmother's, who was right next door, and I told her the story, how I tried to join the Marines and I couldn't because I was too young. And she knew right away. She said, "Brother," she called me, "Brother," she says, "if your father won't take you in, I'll take you by the hand and I'll sign your papers." So I went home to my father and said, "Dad, I want to join the Marines." He said, "You wait until you're 18 and get drafted." I said, "That's okay, Dad. Tomorrow morning, Nana's taking me up to the recruiting sergeant and she's signing my papers." He said, "You son of a gun." So the next day, we went up to the recruiting sergeant and my father signed the papers and I went off to the Marine Corps. So I had 2 years with the Marines, and when I got out of the Marines, it was too late. I got out in August, late August. It was too late for me to go to Boston College where I wanted to go. So what I did, I held off a year, and I went to Northeastern nights to take some courses. And during the day, well, I forgot to tell you that during the early years, my father and mother formed what they call a Pennybrook Improvement Association, because they wanted to get trees and they wanted to get sidewalks and sewers. They didn't have all these things from the city. And so they formed the Pennybrook Improvement Association of about 50 people, and they would have meetings in our house, and meetings would be at 8 o'clock, and they'd put us to bed. But what I'd do, I get out of bed and I'd sit on the stairs that led down into the living room where they were having the meetings, and I would listen to all the things that they're trying to do. So I got kind of interested in what was happening. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, during the day, since I was going to school at night, I decided I wanted to run for public office. Now, I'm only 20, but what I did, I started knocking on doors and telling people that I'd like to be a city council to represent them, and having listened to what the people in the Pennybrook Improvement Association were looking for, I thought that these were some of the other areas where we're looking for the very same things. So I told them the things I would like to see happen in the city of Lynn. And again, I'm only 20. And so there were 11 members running for the office at the time. And Bill Weber, who was a lawyer, was the council president. Well, I got one night waiting for a bus from Northeastern. There was a rally going on in the North End, and I walked over while waiting for the bus, and Jack Kennedy was running for Congress at that time. And so I met Jack Kennedy. He had just finished his talk. I didn't hear too much of his talk, but when he came off, I shook his hand and wished him luck. And then he got elected, and I thought it was fabulous. And the next year, in 1947, I'm a freshman at Boston College. I'm still running for the city council job, and I get nominated to be one of the candidates running against Bill Weber. And I finally make it, and I get a call after I was elected. A story had been in the Boston Globe with pictures and all, and I get a call from Ambassador Kennedy, and Ambassador Kennedy said he would like to see me. I called him back, and he said he would like to see me, and I said, Ambassador, I just got elected. He said, I know all about you. He said, I've read the stories, and I followed up on a few things. He said, I know all about you, but I want to see you. I said, but I'm a freshman in college, and I have homework. Mr. Costin, he said, I want to see you. I said, what day do you want to see me, Mr. Kennedy? So I went in. The following week, they took the tram down from Boston College, which was right across the street, Joe,
Right.
as you know,
Yep.
and went to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and walked up the stairs to the second floor, went to his room, and the door was opened by a fellow by the name of Frank Morrissey. Now, Frank Morrissey was the ambassador's driver, who later became Jack Kennedy's driver, and then when Jack became president, he became a judge. But anyway, when he let me in the room, I looked across, and the door to the bedroom was open, and the ambassador was on the telephone. And he looked out, saw me, waved me into his room, and he was on the phone, and motioned for me to sit down, so I sat down. And he was talking to the owner of the Boston Globe, because there had been a story in the Boston Globe a week before that Jack Kennedy, instead of being a hero, should be in jail for losing that PT boat, and the family should be paying for the PT boat and the 2 lives of the sailors that lost their lives when the boat went down. And the ambassador was saying to him, Bill, if I see another story like this on your paper, I'm going to buy the GD paper, and I'm going to put you out on the street, and clank down the phone. And I'm saying to myself, what the devil am I doing here?
You know, that's such a great story.
No, but the thing is, when he got off the phone, he turned on the charm. And he said to me, he said, Mr. Costin, he said, I need your help. And I'm saying to myself, the ambassador needs my help. I'm 21 years of age. I'm a freshman at Boston College. How the devil can I help him? And then he pointed out. He said, Tom, he said, my son Jack has never been really involved in the local areas. He's always been outside that realm. He said, you're right in the heart of what's happening in each city and in the country. What I'd like to have you do is any legislation that's going to be going through the Congress, I want him to send it to you. You look at it, tell him how it would affect you and the people you represent in your Ward 7. And so that he would have an idea. And if you have suggestions or maybe changes and so forth, I'd like to have you get very close to my son Jack. And he said, I'll make sure that he's in touch with you within 24 hours. And it happened that way. And so after that meeting, I sat down and did a little thinking. I said, here I am, 21 years of age, and the ambassador is calling me to help his son, who's a congressman. And I said, it means that if he's telling his son to listen to me, the son's going to listen to me. So that's my relationship with Jack Kennedy. And then when he became president, he did the very same thing. When I became postmaster, he didn't want me to be postmaster. He wanted me to work at the White House. And after he called me and wanted me to join him at the White House, I called my wife, Rosemary, and said, honey, pack the bags, we're going to go to Washington. She said, what are you talking about? I said, well, the president-elect just called me and wants us to go to Washington.
Incredible.
And so, but there was a pregnant pause, and she said, if you think I'm taking 5 small youngsters to Washington while you spend 24 hours at the White House, you're crazy. She said, I'll pack your bags.
Smart lady.
I said, yes, thank you, honey.
So Tom, here we are. It's the late 40s.
Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit. It's the late 40s. You're a freshman Lynn City Councilor.
Yeah.
with a pipeline to the ambassador and the congressman.
It's just incredible stuff.
Yeah.
So before we get too deep into the Kennedys, can you tell us a little bit about your time as a Ward 7 councilor?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Love to hear. I think people want to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, it was a time of really a time of change because the war was over, and the veterans were coming back, and what we had to do in Lynn, we had in Ward 7, we had what was called a poor farm. It was a great big building, and with a lot of acreage that was to help people in the 1880s. If they lost their home, they could come and live at the poor farm. If it was the summertime, spring and summertime, they had to work on the farm.
And we might point out that's now Veterans Village.
Yeah,
right?
well,
That's where the houses are.
but I was part of the city council group that turned that whole farm area into the Veterans Village, and we made housing lots. And we had a lottery where people could put in, and if their number was picked, they could buy one of those lots for a very cheap price. And so that was how Veterans Village grew.
That's a whole nother part of Lynn's history that needs to be explored more.
Exactly.
The fact that people lived there at the so-called poor farm.
Poor farm, yeah.
And grew their own food.
Right,
And
exactly.
lived there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even the one across the street, the Devlin, was a smallpox hospital originally.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was.
It
Exactly.
was probably all the same land at one point.
Yeah, I think it was, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was all
Before
part of it.
Kerwin
But you even
Circle.
said something I thought was fascinating. I don't think people understand. After World War II, you mentioned the meetings at your house on Pennybrook Road about sewers.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people understand that after World War II, the city started to install sewers in a lot of the outlying areas. They're probably in the inner city, but Lynn's a big city, and that was a tremendous undertaking.
Well, but
We
Joe,
take it for granted.
Yeah, but Joe, one of the things I did, and I don't think people realize it, that what would happen, what developers would do, a developer would come in, take big plots of land, like off of Linfield Street, and what they would do, they would build the house at the end of their property line. Now, the reason they'd build a house at the end of the property line, then when they would come to the Ways and Drainage Commission that I was on when I was a councilor at large, and they would say, all right, now we want the sewer line to go all the way back up to that one house. And the reason they did it is because if we put the sewer line all the way to that one house, it meant that we had to do it for every other house that came there.
Wow.
And so what I did, I got interested in there was a new planning act that had been passed by the legislature, and I really pushed to get that through. And what it meant that any developer coming into the city, it was going to be building, they had to put in the sewer and water lines themselves to any big development that they were going to do, and to save the city a lot of money.
A lot of money. Think
lot of
about
money.
it. Yeah.
That's a practice that's still in place today.
Exactly.
Well, it's a
Oh,
standard
yes,
practice now.
absolutely.
That all came from you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foresight when you think of it. Yeah.
Well, it was just plain thinking.
Yeah.
You do, if people just take the time to think of what they're working on, and then what can be done, and the answers can be found. The big problem I find today in government is that people are not listening. What they're doing, they're talking, but they're not listening to what the other parties are saying. And our government was, our country and our government was built on compromise. If you look at the history of the First Continental Congress, it was because Adams realized that he couldn't do anything by himself because everybody hated the area, the Massachusetts area, because we were pushing for too many things. And he realized that he had to get people from Virginia and so forth, and that's how we were able to work getting Tom Jefferson and Washington and so forth, all through Adams with the compromise. And the best compromise that we ever had in the Congress was Ted Kennedy. Ted, and he was a dear friend. And so one day I had a long conversation with him, and I said, Ted, I said, how is it you can do this? He said, Tom, he said, our government is built on compromise. He said, if I can get 10% in any bill that I'm going through, I'm pleased and happy, because it means that some future date I can put in amendments, amendments, and amendments, and it might take me a little time, but he said, by compromising, I'm able to accomplish what I want to accomplish. I'll give you one example. He was trying to get a bill to put in inner city clinics, like we have in Lynn up on Union Street, inner city clinics. And so I had a long talk with him about that, and I was doing everything I could as far as getting people interested in this. And he told me the story. He said, the House would not even consider it. Now, the House committee was, Colin Powell was the African-American congressman from Harlem. Right. And he was chairman of the committee. And he wouldn't even look at the Kennedy bill. So Ted told me, he said, Tom, he said, what I did, one day I called him up and said, Colin, I want to see you. And he went down to Colin's office and sat down and said, Colin, you've got to help me get these. I'm not interested, he said. He said, Colin, the first one we're going to build is going to be in Harlem. And Colin said, you mean to say you're going to put it in Harlem? And Ted Kennedy, the first one will be built in Harlem. 4 weeks later, the bill passed his committee and passed the House, and we have 1,000 inner city clinics in the country today because of one man and because of compromise.
Amazing stuff. So you finished your two terms as Ward 7?
Yes, 2 terms.
You ran for council at large.
Yes, ran for council at large.
Tell us about that.
All right, you know, it was very interesting. In the primary, I topped the ticket in the primary. Now, my aunt May, her daughter was married, Claire, was married to Nipper Clancy, whose brother Ed Clancy was in the city council. And so they came up with a story, look, brother, meaning me, topped the ticket in the primary. You don't have to vote for him. Give a bullet to me, the bullet meaning vote just for one candidate rather than the 4 candidates you can vote for. So in the final, I barely beat out Bill Nichols on the ticket, so I just barely got in on that, because the family thought that since I topped the ticket in the primary, that I was going to be fine in the final. But it doesn't work that way.
That council at large is always a deadly game with those bullets.
Is that true?
Those bullets can make the difference between first and fourth.
I know. It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So what were the big issues in that councilor at large race? Do you recall?
No, Joe. I mean, Joe, Richard.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I am 92.
I know. Thought you might remember.
Ask me what I had for breakfast.
The issues are probably what they are today. I'm going to do more for you and vote for me because I know you. And all that.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, sidewalks.
Everything's a sidewalk, right?
I'm sure when you were ward council, we were both ward councilors, sidewalks were important.
I know, right.
Sidewalks were huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you decide to run for mayor. What prompted you to run for mayor?
Well, I wanted to run for mayor because I felt that the city needed a full-time mayor. And the mayors up until that time would work a half a day.
Yeah,
and I thought that since the times were changing, and I felt that the city the size of Lynn, with 3 big GE plants and the ebbing out of the shoe factory business, I thought we had to have a full-time administrator. So that was part of my campaign. Arthur Frawley was an attorney, and he would work half a day, and then he'd go to his law office. And I felt that the city needed, and even today, now Tom McGee realizes that the city needs a full-time person.
Well, now it's in the city charter.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what happened those days that you
Right.
have to be, Mayor of Lynn's a
Yeah.
full-time job.
Full-time jobs,
Yeah.
has to be. And so that's that was my campaign. My campaign was that the needs of the people were so great that it couldn't be a 4-hour job. It had to be somebody that was taking a look at everything that was taking place.
Now, were you on the council or you were mayor when City Hall, the present City Hall was built?
I was on the became a city councilor when they started to tear down the city hall. So what the mayor's office was sent, and our council chamber was sent to the Harrington School, and the mayor's office was at the Harrington School, and we had all our meetings at the Harrington School in the gymnasium, and we were there for about 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard stories because, as you know, my grandfather worked for you when you
Yes,
were mayor.
I know that.
He was the fire
Great
chief.
fire chief.
Yeah,
Great, and the father was too.
Yeah,
It was.
Yeah.
but I remember my grandfather worked directly for you.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I remember the stories about them being, different departments being in different buildings.
Right, in the city.
In the city.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know
It was,
what
it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, very difficult to have meetings and all that. People had to travel. And,
Yeah. It was,
yeah.
but in the old City Hall, we've got all pictures of it down in the
Yeah.
museum.
It's a beautiful
We have a
building.
replica down
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But the only problem was, Joe, there were no parking areas around, and right after the war, the veterans, every veteran wanted to get a car, regardless how old it was, they wanted to have wheels, and so there was no area down there to put up parking spaces, and it had to be done.
And I think they also wanted
Yeah.
to build a memorial to the veterans. That's what
Yes,
the auditorium
absolutely.
is
Yeah,
Right.
for.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
But
Beautiful building.
City Hall is a beautiful building
It is
today.
a beautiful building. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
well
they just
constructed,
did
everything.
Yeah.
Did a remarkable job renovating the lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
Fabulous.
looks good. Now, do you remember who designed the City Hall now? Probably don't.
I can't
on the
remember
plaque,
that.
isn't it?
Just thought you might remember that. But what's
ask
your
me
best
what I had
memories?
for breakfast. Richard.
I know,
We'll go look at the plaque.
I know, but God, there's so much knowledge that you have of all of this, and we need to hear it all. So you're elected. Do you remember what you said in your inaugural speech?
I do have that inaugural speech, and I was talking about schools. I was talking about housing, because the veterans all looking for housing and so forth. So we had to look at housing. We had to look at the senior citizen situation and schools. We had to look at schools. It was a time. It was a time because the times changed. All the returning veterans were older now. They wanted jobs, and we were very fortunate having the GE right in the city with 3 big plants, and we had over 20,000 workers at the time.
I don't think people understand there were 3 plants.
3 plants. We had the Riverworks plant, the West Lynn plant, and then the Allison Street plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was a huge building on Allison
Allison
Yeah,
Street,
it was.
too.
It was
That's
a big,
exactly
it was a big
where,
building. Yeah.
what's it, the gym is Planet
McDonald's
Fitness.
and
Yeah.
the gym.
Yeah.
That's where that was. And
Yeah.
West Lynn was
Yeah.
actually where Market Basket
Yeah,
is
right,
now.
exactly. Yeah.
On both sides of the street.
Both sides of the street. Yeah.
Right.
And even the Riverworks was a lot larger
Yeah.
then than it is now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
When you think of the impact of that on the economy with the machine shops and
Well-
payroll and all that.
You know what people fail to realize that during World War II, just before World War II, really got underway with Britain being in it. The jet engine was developed in England, and they were afraid that if they got into the war with Germany, that and they were invaded, that Germany would be able to pick up about the jet engines. So the deal was made to ship the jet engine whole program right to the Riverworks in Lynn. And what it meant was that not only do they ship the whole business of the jet engines, but they had to send in the engineers, and about 150 people from England came in and became citizens immediately in our country. We had 4 families up in our neighborhood came from England to work at GE on the jet engines, and a lot of people don't know that.
No, amazing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and you mentioned housing. Like, I know from my time at the Lynn Housing Authority that you had to be on the council when Kerwin Circle, America Park
Absolutely.
were built.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
at the time, also where Classical High School is now, there were clay pits up there.
Yes.
That was in your ward.
No, that was in my ward, and I had a long talk with the late mayor,
Pat McManus.
Pat McManus. I told him, whatever you do, don't build a building on that land, because we grew up there. During my early years, in the summertime, we worked on Pike's farm, and Joker Pike was the grandfather. And Joker Pike wore a derby hat, glasses, and a vest with a chain across with his watch. And we would get down to work, and he would write in a little book our names. He was all dressed up, our names, what time we started, and if it happened to rain and we had to come to the barn, he put that down there, and we're getting 15 cents an hour. And we had to work on the farm, and they grew a lot of tomatoes and so forth, and then we would have to harvest the tomatoes. But one of the things that would happen, that the great bakery in Lynn, they would send all their bring all the stale things in and dump it into the pits. But what they would do, they would put a lot of the day-old stuff, they put it in the front seat, and so us kids would run down to the truck, and if we could beat Joker Pike down to get him, we could get something. But sometimes Joker Pike would beat us down, and we never got anything. But anyway, as I said, if it rained or there was a sprinkle and he pulled everybody into the barn, we were taken off the payroll. We were taken off the payroll for an hour and a half, and we had to sit around and wait. But that was my early days
There's
working.
a lot of land there when you think of it.
A lot of land.
And now Classical High sits on it.
Well,
Sinking on it.
Breed, Callahan.
Yeah.
Read all of
right.
it. But
Yeah.
just what we were talking yesterday,
Yeah.
the new Classical you're talking about with the late friend Pat McManus.
Right.
One of the few buildings that has my name on it from all my years on the city council. So, and it's sinking. But I think they've done great things the last couple of
Yeah,
years to
yeah.
I think they
settle it down.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be good, because
Yeah.
it is a nice building. So, do you have other memories of being mayor?
Oh yeah. One of the things I did was while I was a city councilor, I'd be looking I'd be talking to the congressman Joe Kennedy, because I was working with him, and he would tell me about some of the areas I should look at. And one of the areas he told me I should get in touch with the mayor of New Haven, Connecticut, because he came up with some ideas on housing. So I made an appointment to see him, and I went down for a day and spent a day with him, and he took me on a tour of the city and showed me what they were doing. And really, one of the things that I was trying to really get through was that he said the only way for a city to really survive with the housing is that you cannot put all the low-income family housing in one area together. What you have to do, you have to have some low-income housing with some middle-sized income housing, and then some higher housing. And he said the reason for it is this, that the people who spend some money on housing, are going to take care of their buildings, are going to make sure that they have gardens and do things. And what it does, it kind of spreads out to everybody else in the neighborhood. So we said, this is how we've been successful and that was one of the things that we try to do. But it didn't happen until Tom McGee became Speaker of the House. Right. And when he became Speaker of the House, that's exactly what happened. They tore down all the low-rent housing in that area down by where the school is now, and they made it into three sections. They made the upper-end housing, they made the middle housing, and they made lower-end housing in Lynn.
Yeah, King's Lynn.
King Lynn.
Yeah.
And that has worked.
Yeah, that has been very
thanks,
successful.
yeah, all thanks to Tom McGee.
And you served with him on the council too, right?
I served with, yeah. He was very difficult to serve with.
Well, I heard he said that, he told me that about you too, so I don't.
But, that's a great point.
I know, but we became great friends.
Yeah.
That's a great point, though, and there's a beautiful picture that we have of you on your first city council.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you served with back then?
Wow.
Any characters, that's what we want to know.
Yeah, we don't know about the characters, right?
They'd probably tell you I was one of the characters too, because of my age.
They can't refute you, so go ahead.
Well, we had a lot of different people. I'm not going to give names because I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Fair enough.
But we had one councilor who was not married, did not have a house, did not have a job, and lived at one of the fire stations. But he was elected to the city council, and all he'd do all day long is walk the ward and talk to the people.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one. I'm not going to mention his name. And then we had some other city councilors. We had another city councilor whose son was a city councilor, and then he went off to the war, and so he became a Ward 2 councilor, and his name was Bill Boot. Right. But Bill, one thing about Bill would not say a word. Bill would not make a motion, and he would wait till the right vote came up, and then he would vote with the winning crowd, and but he got reelected and reelected, all because during the day he'd walk around the ward.
Right.
Just talking to people.
He did his homework.
He did his homework, absolutely.
Right.
But, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you finish your terms as councilor at large, you run for mayor, you're elected as mayor, and along this time, you've had a parallel relationship with the Kennedy family.
Yeah.
It's all heading forward. But before we leave the mayor things, a couple of the things. One thing I wanted to touch base with you on is, I was talking to Dave Riley, our cameraman here earlier, about the Brickyard. He's a graduate of Lynn Tech.
Right.
And I was telling him about what existed where Tech was before that.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Poor Dave had no knowledge that this had ever been. So we thought maybe we'd have you talk about the old Brickyard, maybe campaigning there.
Yeah. What happened? You really have to. You really would have to have lived in the 40s and the 50s to really appreciate it, because that whole area was all built up with small stores. A lot of stores that sold chickens and so forth, and right along the street, the Brickyard was the area where they would take the clay from the Pike area and take it down and make the bricks right in the Brickyard area. That's how it got its name. That's where the bricks were made for all the big buildings in Lynn. When you see all the big red brick factory buildings in Lynn that are now housing, that's where it came from. Wow. But when I was mayor, that that area was really dilapidated, and we had problems with rodents and everything else, and so one of the things we were trying to do was to clean up the area, because we were getting calls in from the St. Mary's School and so forth that the rats were bad and this. So what we were trying to do was to straighten up the area, and what I was trying to do with the program I had, and we were going along wonderfully with it, until Arthur Frawley, who the fellow I defeated, came back into the city council. And so anything I wanted to do as mayor, he would vote no and get people to vote against it. And a lot of the votes, as you know, and having been city councilors, if it requires funding and so forth, it causes a three-quarter vote. And so a lot of times, the 3 votes that he could manage would throw out things. And we already had contracts with Macy's store people who wanted to come up, because what we were trying to do was to go all of Union Street, and we were going to make it into a big, I won't say shopping center area, but it would have been like a shopping center area to bring in Macy's, because at that time, if you can think about it, Lynn was the shopping center for the North Shore. We had more stores on Market Street, on Oxford Street, on Monroe Street, and then up in Union Street. Women's clothing stores. We had shoe stores. We had stores with the furniture and so forth.
Yeah.
And it was a big. And we had Filene's. We had a Filene's basement. We had a Raymond.
Started in
Yeah, right. And we had
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Woolworth started in Lynn too, and we had 2 of those, one on Market Street and one up on Union Street.
Yeah.
And so it was an area where people came to shop, and but because we didn't move fast enough, then the shopping center area over in Danvers and Peabody came into being.
Right.
But we
had a Sears there for a while too.
Yeah,
Right here on
absolutely.
Union
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Right here
There's-
it is,
we
yeah.
have a map down the museum someplace. I've seen it, and it lists. Doesn't list the streets as much as it lists who owned the property.
Right. Yeah.
And there were like 2 Grants,
Yeah.
2 Woolworths, 2
Woolworths.
Kresge's.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Conley's chocolate shop.
Conley's,
Yeah.
Mazzaferro's.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
Great
Yeah,
people.
it was.
And then we had, and then just think of the residents. We had Hunts in Central Square, and we had a lot of areas.
Waldorf, I remember.
The Waldorf was there.
Waldorf
It was
cafeteria.
Waldorf, and then we had the Hunts, and
Hunt's even had a fancy dining room.
Yeah,
I
they did.
forget
upstairs.
the name of it.
Yeah, yeah, it was upstairs.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
there was a place where next door to where Lynn Arts is now. It's called Basil's. I've seen pictures.
Yes,
of that. That was
absolutely.
A fancy
That was a
restaurant.
fancy restaurant right around the corner.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and
Amazing.
it's amazing.
And then we had 13 movies,
yeah.
Wow.
13 movie houses.
Wow. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Now, to shift gears just a little bit, your father was the police chief, the
Yeah.
career police officer. And I know because I remember he was my uncle's partner for a while, Jimmy Coppinger,
know,
years
Jimmy.
ago. But you want to talk about him a little bit? Tell us about him.
Yeah, he was really my hero. When his father died, of the 10 children, the first 5 oldest had to go out and work, and my father was right in the middle, so he was one, and so he went to the 8th grade of school. But the one thing he did, he never stopped reading. Anything he wanted to do, he would pick up a book. And he did everything. He built houses. We had chickens that he would get from the eggs and candle them downstairs, and would have little chicks behind the stove in the kitchen when they were born.
Wow.
And so, but anything he wanted to do, he would read. And all the exams every position he had in the police department was all civil service. They had to take civil service examinations for him. And every exam he took, he'd come out on the top, all because he read. He really read. But he really was my hero because he could do anything. But he was really wanted to help people. And this is where I think I got my feelings. Also, my grandmother, she would be the person in the neighborhood if someone became sick or if somebody died and so forth. My job would be to take my little red cart and bring food to put in the cart, and she'd say, "Brother," she said, "you go here to this house here, and they need some food, and if they need anything else," and she said, "you come back and let me know." And so, and the other thing that you would do, in the beginning of the summer, in the Catholic Church, they would at Sacred Heart Church, at the children's mass, they would bring in orphans, and put them in the back of the church and ask the people if they could take an orphan for the summer. And my grandmother, when that would happen, my grandmother would call me and say, "Brother, I want you to go to church with me." So I'd go with her, and she would sit, and she'd be the last one there. And she would, if somebody was left, she would take the one left. If there were two people, she'd take two. And one time there were three. She took three, but it never happened again. Three were too much for her. But she would take them for the summer, and then they became, we would play with them and so forth. But I got my feeling of service, I think, from watching what she did and what my father and my mother, told me that certain things we had to do. One of the things we did during the WPA days with the Works Project Administration, we had 3,000 men going up into the woods working, and the way they did it, they would work. There would be 6 work days right through Saturday. But one group would work 3 days, and another group would work 3 days. They get 3 days of work, and they would walk up there and do their work, and then come back down. And the very hot days, my mother would give us great big pails of water and cups, and would be out there with a ladle, and anybody needed water, they would stop by and would give them. The only problem was, they would take the cups, and as they would walk down the street, they'd throw the cups away. So our job was, after they all left, we had to go on the street with my little red wagon and pick up all the cups. But this was where I think I got my feeling that this is what we had to do.
Great story.
Yeah.
Now, to back up a little, you were mayor for how long?
Well, I was 5.5 years.
5.5 years.
Yeah.
Now, as I remember correctly, I think you had some pretty good accomplishments as mayor. It wasn't all the fact the stores didn't come in. You were, I believe you brought the planning department into Lynn?
Yeah.
The planning department,
Yeah.
the parking lots?
Yeah. Yes, we
So
did
was,
that.
there's no
Yeah,
parking
we need to
down
hear
there.
about
Yeah.
this. These are great stories.
Yeah.
Well,
It was forward thinking.
well, again, it's because again, I looked at what's happening in other areas of the country, and if I saw something that I felt was the right thing to do, I would talk to people and would work it out, and yeah, we did. We had the parking authority, and yeah,
I believe it's a planning board because,
planning board, yeah,
that
So
was-
important.
yeah.
Yeah. These are issues people still talk about today.
I know.
Kind of like the housing you talked about,
But Joe, again, that's why I thought that the mayor of the city of Lynn had to be a full-time job.
Definitely.
It has to be
Yeah.
a full-time job.
Yeah,
And we've got,
exactly
the
right.
mayor we have now realizes the full-time job, and he is doing a great job.
A very complicated
Yeah,
jop.
yeah, he really, yeah.
It's a
Very
Yeah.
complicated.
But we're fortunate because he's got that background of working in the Senate and so forth, and and we've got a very good delegation up at the State House now.
Yeah, he's made great
Yeah.
use of his contacts.
He really has. He
And-
really has.
and-
Yeah.
and what do they do
Yeah,
up there?
yeah.
They, in the State House, they compromise, as
Yeah.
you said.
Compromise.
And that's what we have to do in Lynn.
That's what we have to do. We have to compromise.
Now, I know, Joe, when we were talking yesterday in the planning, Joe was asking you also what buildings you constructed while you were mayor, and there was a school or two, I
Yeah.
think you said?
Yeah.
Was it Hood?
Yeah.
You said the Hood School?
What's good?
I was telling you, I remember that well, because they
You
moved.
lived near there,
Yeah, I lived in, they tore down greenhouses across the
Yeah.
street from my house and moved houses there.
I do remember them moving the house.
Yeah, that was amazing,
Yeah.
too, and I remember as a kid just being
And you named
so
it after the
impressed.
first mayor of Lynn. That's
Right.
George
Yeah.
Hood.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
His house is right around the corner of Walnut Street. It's right up on the hill, the big hill.
Is it?
It's
Yeah.
still there?
Yep.
Yeah. If you're riding up and going toward Saugus, up and you come up on Walnut Street, you go right by it, right on the corner.
Wow,
There's a plaque right there that says it,
Yeah.
Mayor Hood.
wow, that's right.
Yeah.
So what else, Joe, about Tom and the city stuff? There's got to be a lot more.
Yeah,
before we-
it's 5.5 years back in the 50s. You can't tell us nothing happened.
Oh, well, we had a lot that was happening, but we spent so much time trying to do urban redevelopment, and again, if it hadn't been for
Yeah.
if
Go ahead,
it, I
sorry.
mean, if it hadn't been for Arthur Frawley getting back in the city council, and because of everything to do with working with the government, he had to have the 3/4 vote, and so I spent a lot of time on that. I wish.
I was
wish
going to
we
ask you a
Yeah.
question about, you were mayor as Jack Kennedy's career progressed, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you were mayor when he got elected to the Senate?
Well, you know.
Oh, were you in the council?
Well, he when he was running for re-election, he asked me. I was mayor. He asked me if I would head up the registration drive for the Democratic Party in 1958. And one of the pictures we have here, there's just shows Jack Kennedy and Ted Kennedy and myself. That was in the Boston Globe. That was a day that he announced that he was running for re-election to the Senate, and that he was naming his brother Ted, who was just discharged from the American Army and came in from Germany. He was going to be his campaign manager, and Mayor Costin of Lynn was going to be the head of the Democratic registration drive for the whole Commonwealth. And after that picture appeared in the paper, he gave me a call. He gave me a call and said, Tom, he said, I got a call from the governor, Devlin, and you got to go in and see the governor, and also from John McCormick. He wants to see you too. I said, what do they want to see me about? They just want to be sure you're going to be working for the Democratic Party. So I went up and I saw the governor, and the governor said, now, Mary said, you got to remember, he said, you're doing this for the Democratic Party. It's not just for Jack Kennedy. I said, Governor, I know exactly what I have to do. He said, as long as you do, he said, I'm behind you 100%. And then I went and saw John McCormick, and John McCormick said the very same thing. He said, Tom, he said, don't forget now, he said, you're working for the Democratic Party of Massachusetts. I said, Mr. Speaker, I know exactly what I have to do. Now, here's what I did. Every city and town had a Democratic city and town committee. So what I did, I had people in Lynn, and I put out 2 people would go to the different cities and towns to talk to the Democratic City and Town Committee. And what I told them was, don't forget, you tell them we're for the Democratic Party of Massachusetts. But I said, the last thing you're going to tell them is this, that, you know, if we have a good, strong registration, there's a good possibility that Jack Kennedy can be president of the United States. And that's what they did. Wow. And a book came out called The 7 Caesars, and it's talked about 7 presidents. And in that book, on page 213, it mentions that the biggest registration drive in the country was in 1948, when the Democratic Party in Massachusetts had its largest influx
Wow.
of new names.
You know, seems like a good point. Our staff has given me the signal that our time's just about up for this first segment of this.
Oh, I'm
And,
coming back?
Yes.
We want you to come back for a second segment. We got a lot of the city stuff out of the way today. Next time we want to get into the meat of it with the Kennedys and
Yep.
your time as postmaster and through the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And we hope you'll do that soon.
Oh, I'm ready.
But I want to point out also that all of this is leading up to the dedication of the Lynn Post Office on Willow Street as the Thomas P. Costin Post Office, which is going to take place next Friday, May 24th, 11 a.m. The public is welcome. We hope that everyone will come down from the city and help us to celebrate everything that Mr. Costin has done for the City of Lynn and our citizens and for our country. Because there's so much more for us to talk about.
Yeah, we just got scratched the surface on your career.
We really did. The time went by fast.
Yes, it did.
But I also just want to thank Dave Riley and Pedro and Kay and our whole staff here for, these guys have done a lot of work preparing everything for you.
I
And
know.
to thank our board of directors at LCTV, and especially Bob Tucker, our board president,
Yes.
who really wanted to be here.
I know.
Yeah.
But things didn't work out for him. But
Yes.
maybe he'll come in with us the next time when we really get into all of this. So thank you for all this, and thank you, Joe.
I want to thank you
And,
for inviting me.
And please, maybe next week, we can come in and do
I'd be
section,
very happy.
part 2 of
Yeah.
this. And
Wonderful.
Yeah.
with that, thank everyone for watching, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And we hope you'll try to come down on May 24th, 11 a.m. to the Lynn Post Office to celebrate the dedication of the post office in Mr. Costin's name. And we hope you'll watch the second part of this.
Now,
coming up
Richard.
shortly.
Mr. Costin was my father.
Mr. Costin
I'm
was your
Tom
father.
Costin.
Tom Costin. TPC, as we
I'm
like
a
to call
junior.
you.
I always call you Mr. Mayor. It's easier.
Mr. Mayor, you have many titles, and we haven't even scratched the surface on them. Really, we appreciate your time, and this may even take 3 sessions. I don't know, but
I really appreciate it.
good. I know you're busy.
I really appreciate it.
So thank you for watching, and we look forward to the next session and hope you'll tune in then.